Good morning, this is Jerry Alt, and here I am again with some quick and dirty Lightroom and Photoshop tips to help you as we navigate this quarantine period together. So here's a photo that I took a while ago for a clothing designer, some of her African designs, and you can see that I shot this pretty wide. This is a 9-foot seamless shot in my studio, but I wasn't sure what I wanted to do with it, whether I was going to put down another background or even composite the image. So I pulled back and shot this wider than I would normally. So it's a little bit crooked here showing on the top, and obviously we're seeing space on either side beyond the background. So how do we fix that? Well, here's part of the issue. If I go to my aspect ratio tool here on the left, as you can see over here, I can straighten this image, and that's close enough, and then I can crop it down and try within Lightroom to get rid of those nasty areas on the side. But if I do that, now I've got a pretty tight area around my model. Now, I tend to shoot tighter generally. I do a lot of beauty work and headshots, and so trying to get tight to my subject is a good thing. You can see the detail in the eyes, and it's easy to crop in and get specific poses that you want to reproduce for your client. However, here we're shooting fashion, so it's a little bit wider anyway. But here's the problem. If I had this image and could keep it just in Lightroom and deliver to the client, let's say they want an 8x10. Well, if I tried to change the aspect ratio over here, I go down to 8x10, now you can see that it's really, really tight, and I've cut off some of the subject, especially on the bottom. So if I pull this back up to what would make a decent 8x10, here's the problem. I'm back having those edges that are really unacceptable. So here's a quick way to do that. I've got an image similar to this that I already pulled up in, it's from the same shoot. I brought this into Photoshop so I can show you a couple of quick ways to fix this. You can see how tight it is at the bottom, a little bit of headroom, but still, if this was to be turned into an 8x10 right now, I can tell you that this crop would not be acceptable. So we're going to lose the crop. How do we do this? Well, the first thing is go to your image menu, drop down to canvas size, and we're going to increase this canvas size. Now there's a couple of ways to do this. This anchor point at the bottom, if you click over on the far right, what it's telling the computer is anything I change in the width or the height, I want it to start from here and only extend to the left. Similarly, you can click over there and it would extend to the right. In some situations, that's a good idea. In fact, I'm going to show you real quick what we can do. If I were to add 1000 pixels to my width only and start at the left, now it says, well, what color do you want when I, extend the canvas? We can leave it the background, which is black in this situation. But here's what happens. I get black space over here on the right. Well, here's how you fix that. Let's go up to our tools, grab the rectangular marquee tool, and this is similar to some of the techniques that I used for selecting things in my last video. But we're going to select that extension on the right. Make sure you select part of the existing canvas so that the program knows what to do with it. So here we're just going to hit the delete key, which brings up our fill submenu, and you want to make sure that you've selected content aware. When you select content aware, Photoshop looks at the remaining pixels surrounding your selection and then fills appropriately. So here we have nothing on the right, it's only going to be able to look at pixels on the left. So we hit OK, and then it takes just a moment. Program's trying to determine what it should do to fill that. And we see it did a pretty decent job. It's vignetted out a little bit here, vignetted a little bit in the corner. Those are things you can fix someplace else in your editing. Like I said, I may ultimately have wanted to simply replace the entire background. That'd be a selection and add layer, and we're going to get into that with some advanced editing in a future video. But this isn't bad. Well, let's see what happens now if I try to make an 8x10 out of this. Because all of that room was on the right, when I try to bring this back to make it reasonable again, I've lost something. So let's get out of that. I'm going to revert this image to where it was before. Sorry, I just went to the File menu. If you find yourself really screwing up an image, one of the things you can do, as long as you haven't changed the state too many times, is you can go to the File menu and go down to Revert. It's right there. And that takes you back to the state of your image when you first opened it, whether you imported it from another program, like from Lightroom. That's what I typically do, is I hit the Command E and it edits directly in Photoshop, and when I close the image it goes back into Lightroom into my catalog. So that's my workflow, but for this purpose here we have just the original image. So let's do this a little bit differently. Let's go back and change the canvas size, but this time I'm going to use the center point as my anchor, and I'm going to go ahead and add a fair amount of room here, 1500 pixels, but what it's going to do now is extend on both sides of the image. So if you can guess what's going to happen, this is already going to look better when we try to change the aspect. So again, I have to do two steps here of selecting. I hit my delete key and my OK. It's going to try to fix the left side. And that did a pretty reasonable job, all things considered. So now I'm going to grab on the right. Be careful about things, whoops, excuse me. Be careful about coming in so close to something else here, because Photoshop might borrow from that dress and give me an undesirable result. So I want to select some of those pixels, but I don't want to get so close to my subject that I end up duplicating that dress into the extension. That's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to get a clean background. So now Photoshop is working on making that selection, and again, so I've got a little bit of problem here. There's a couple of ways to fix this. It was trying to guess the entire right side, so let's say I just selected this piece up here and say, hey, let's do a better job, and a lot of times it will. There we go. We got a cleaner selection. It's got a little bit of vignetting in the corner, but I'm okay with this. Same thing over here. We could select something a little bit smaller, give it less taxing demands on the computer processor, and it does a pretty good job. Now if I want to clean that up more, I would probably just go into my healing brush, and here on my healing brush it's using content aware as well. So when you do this, you have to hold down your option key, click on an area that you want to blend from, and then you can blend this back in. So anyway, this is pretty good. This was supposed to be just about the cropping. So now let's try to make an 8x10 much more acceptable. We can get an image out of this. Last thing I'll throw out to you is, if you decided you wanted more room, let's say here we want more room on the bottom, we can do the same thing again. Extend our canvas, maybe 500 pixels on the bottom, but if I want it just to go on the bottom, then I'm going to change that anchor point here to the top and say only extend in this direction. So I do that, I get a bottom piece. Now I can go back and grab my marquee tool again, grab that bottom, and you're going to see that we should have a nice clean solid background there, because it's borrowing from pretty much uniform pixels. And there we go. So let's one last time see if we can pull an 8x10 and look at that. We've got plenty of room to do our cropping. Sorry, if I grab the right piece it'll work better. There we go. Now I can crop and make a very acceptable 8x10. All right, that's it, folks. Have a great day. See you soon.